The first warning was not the alarm. It was the sound of metal screaming. Lieutenant Mara Venn felt the entire cockpit twist beneath her as something enormous tore across the fighter's left wing. Sparks filled the canopy. The controls kicked against her hands. Then the alarms came. 3 at once. Structural failure. Engine 2, offline. Ejection system damaged. Mara looked through the smoke. Below her, the evacuation carrier was burning. Behind it, 6 black enemy ships dropped through the clouds. And between those ships and the carrier floated 247 small life signs. Children. Mara's oxygen mask hissed against her face. "Control," she said, steady, despite the shaking cockpit. "How many minutes?" Static. Then the answer. 14 minutes until the carrier reaches the extraction gate. Mara looked at the enemy fleet. "Negative." Her voice became colder. 14 minutes is how long I need to keep them alive." Another impact. The cockpit lights died. For 3 seconds, Mara was blind. When the emergency lights returned, the tactical display showed 12 hostile fighters closing fast. Her own fighter had 1 functioning engine, 31% fuel, a damaged weapon system, and an ejection seat that no longer worked. Mara tightened her grip. "All right." She breathed once. "Let's make them regret following us." The children had never been supposed to be there. That was the first thing Mara had learned. The second was that nobody in command wanted to talk about it. The Cathari children were refugees from a world that no longer existed. Their planet, Nerith, had been stripped by the Varen Directorate 3 months earlier. Not conquered, not occupied, stripped. Cities emptied, factories dismantled, archives erased, population centers abandoned after anything valuable had been removed. The Cathari survivors had been transported in scattered groups toward neutral space. The youngest were placed aboard the civilian transport Mercy of Dawn. 247 children. The oldest was 14. The youngest was 6 weeks old. Mara had never seen them. Not until the evacuation began. The Mercy of Dawn had been 6 minutes from the extraction gate when the Varens arrived. They had come through the moon's shadow. 8 warships, 26 fighters. No warning, no negotiation, just weapons. The first missile struck the transport's rear shield. The second destroyed its navigation array. The third would have killed everyone if Mara had not intercepted it. She had been flying patrol 12 kilometers away. She saw the missile. She did not wait for permission. Her fighter accelerated. 37 seconds later, she hit the missile with both cannons. It detonated close enough to throw her fighter into a spin. Mara recovered. Then she heard the carrier captain. "Venn, what are you doing?" "Buying you time. You were ordered to escort the Eastern Corridor." "I changed my mind." A pause. "You cannot change orders." Mara watched the Mercy of Dawn limp toward the extraction gate. "Apparently I can." The captain had almost laughed. Then the Varen fleet appeared, and nobody laughed anymore. "Lieutenant," the voice in Mara's headset belonged to Commander Elias Rourke, her commanding officer, her mentor, the man who had taught her to fly before she was old enough to understand why the stars looked different through a cockpit canopy. His voice was controlled, too controlled. "Mara, listen carefully." "I'm listening." "High Command has authorized withdrawal." Mara looked at the tactical display. The Mercy of Dawn was still moving. Slowly, but moving. Negative. That wasn't a request. Mara's eyes narrowed. "You have another fighter." "No." "Then send a cruiser." "We have no cruiser." "What about the defense frigate?" "Disabled." Mara watched 3 Varen fighters turn toward the carrier. Then we're out of options. Rourke was silent. "No," he said. "We are out of authorized options." Mara understood. High Command had calculated the numbers. 8 enemy warships, 26 fighters. 1 damaged civilian transport, 1 damaged human fighter, a gate that would open in 14 minutes. The probability of successful evacuation was low. The probability of Mara surviving was almost non-existent. Military doctrine had a simple answer. Withdraw. Preserve the pilot. Preserve the fighter. Do not trade a trained human for civilian assets that may already be lost. Mara stared at the carrier. Then she asked quietly, "Commander, how many children?" Rourke didn't answer. "How many?" 247. Mara nodded. "Then I'm staying." "Mara, I'm staying." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." The command channel went silent. Then Rourke said something that Mara would remember for the rest of her life. "You're not ordered to save them." Mara looked at the burning transport. "No." She pushed the throttle forward. "I'm choosing to." The first enemy fighter arrived 30 seconds later. Mara waited. She let it come close. Closer. Closer. The Veran pilot expected fear. Instead, Mara killed her engine. The fighter overshot. Mara rolled beneath it. Her damaged targeting system couldn't lock, so she aimed manually. 2 cannon bursts. The Veran fighter disappeared into flame. 25. Mara breathed. 25. Another pair came from above. She climbed. 1 missile. 2. She dropped between them. The missiles collided. The explosion threw her fighter sideways. Mara slammed against the harness. Pain flashed across her ribs. She ignored it. Her fuel dropped to 27%. 24. The children remained alive. That was the only number that mattered. Inside the mercy of dawn, nobody knew what the human pilot was doing. They only knew something was protecting them. The youngest children had been moved into the central medical bay. The older ones were strapped into emergency seats. Some were crying. Some were silent. A Cathari girl named Tali had stopped crying entirely. She was 11. Her fur was pale blue around the ears and darker across the cheeks. She held a tiny metal music box. It had survived Nareth. Barely. One corner was crushed. The lid didn't close properly. But when she turned the little wheel on its side, it played 3 notes. Only 3. The 4th note was broken. Tali had been told by the transport medic that the music box was useless. She disagreed. "It knows the song," she said. "What song?" "My mother's." She wound it again. 3 notes. Silence, then 3 more. A nurse smiled. "Doesn't sound like much." Tali looked toward the ceiling. "It sounds like home." Then the ship shook. Children screamed. A medic grabbed the nearest rail. Overhead, something exploded. The lights flickered. Tali clutched the music box. A voice came over the ship speakers. "All passengers remain secured." The captain's voice. "Do not look outside." Tali looked outside. Through the small observation port, she saw fire. And behind the fire, a human fighter. It was tiny compared with the Veran ships. It was alone. It turned toward them. Tali pressed her palm against the glass. The fighter rolled once, then disappeared into the darkness. Mara fired her last guided missile. It struck a Veran fighter in the engine. The fighter spun away, but the missile had cost her something. The weapon bay indicator flashed red. Guided missiles, 0. Cannon ammunition, 18%. Fuel, 21%. Hull integrity, 46%. The extraction gate, 11 minutes. Mara looked at the numbers, then at the enemy. She smiled without humor. "Still plenty." Rourke came over the comm. "Mara, your fighter is losing pressure." "I noticed." "You need to land." "Where?" "Anywhere." "That's not a plan." "It's the only plan left." Mara looked toward the mercy of dawn. The transport was moving at half its design speed. One engine was dead. Its shields were down to 22%. The Varans were closing. "No, Mara. If I land, they kill the carrier. You cannot stop 20 fighters. Don't need to." She banked hard. "I only need them to think I can." That was the first trick. Mara knew the Varans expected a retreat. Their doctrine was built around pressure. Force the enemy to defend. Force them backward. Force them to make predictable choices. Human pilots had spent decades studying that doctrine. Mara had spent 6 years flying against it. She knew something the Varans didn't. They assumed she was trying to survive. She wasn't. She was trying to control where they died. Mara flew toward the moon. not away from it. The moon's surface was covered in frozen mineral dust. The sunlit side reached temperatures high enough to vaporize exposed metal. The dark side was nearly absolute zero. Between them ran a narrow band of violent temperature change. Mara dove toward that boundary. 3 Veyran fighters followed. "Come on!" She pushed lower. The first fighter followed. The second hesitated. The third stayed high. Mara smiled. Smart. She cut her engine. Her fighter dropped. The pursuing fighter accelerated past her. Mara restarted the engine at the last possible second. The sudden thrust sent her upward. The Veyran fighter plunged into the thermal boundary. Its outer armor cracked from rapid expansion. Mara rolled away. The fighter broke apart. 23. But the maneuver cost her. Engine temperature, 94%. Hull integrity, 38%. Mara coughed. Blood appeared on her glove. She wiped it away. Still flying. Rourke heard her. "Mara, I'm fine. You're bleeding. I'm still fine. You don't have to prove anything." Mara looked at the carrier. "I know." That answer frightened him more than anger would have. The Veyrans changed tactics. That was when Mara realized they were learning. The remaining fighters stopped chasing her individually. They spread out. 4 ahead, 6 behind, 8 above. They weren't trying to kill her anymore. They were hurting her. Toward the carrier. Mara stared at the tactical display. "They've figured it out," Rourke asked. "Figured out what?" "They know I won't leave the transport." Silence. Then, "What are you going to do?" Mara looked at the numbers. Fuel, 17%. Cannon, 11%. Gate, 8 minutes, 42 seconds. She whispered, "Give them something else to chase." Mara transmitted on the open Veyran channel. Her translator converted her voice into their language. "Your fighters are too slow." No response. She tried again. 6 of you against 1 damaged fighter. Nothing. Mara laughed. "You can do better." A Veyran fighter broke formation, exactly as she expected. It came fast. Mara pulled away. The fighter followed. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, 9 Veyran fighters were chasing her. The carrier was behind them, unprotected. For 3 seconds, Mara wondered if she'd made a mistake. Then Rourke spoke. 3 more enemy fighters are turning back." "Good. What?" "Watch them." Mara wasn't trying to draw all the fighters away. She was trying to split them. 9 followed her. 3 remained near the carrier. Those 3 were the dangerous ones. Mara accelerated, then cut left. The 9 followed. The 3 near the carrier stayed, exactly what she wanted. "Now," Mara said. The Mercy of Dawn fired its emergency mining charges. They weren't weapons. They were industrial explosives designed to break asteroids. The carrier fired 6 toward the moon. Mara had calculated the trajectory. The charges struck the frozen surface. The moon cracked. Not deeply, just enough. A cloud of mineral debris exploded into orbit. The 3 Veyran fighters disappeared inside it. Their sensors went blind. The carrier accelerated. Gate, 7 minutes, 51 seconds. Mara smiled. Then the Veyrans fired something new. A thin blue beam struck her fighter. Every warning light turned red. Mara screamed as the cockpit filled with heat. The beam wasn't destroying the fighter, it was scanning it. Her display changed. "External control attempt detected." Mara stared. "They're trying to take me alive." Rourke heard her. "Why?" Mara's breathing slowed. "I don't know." The scan intensified. Then another message appeared. "Neural interface identified." Mara went cold. "They're not trying to capture the fighter." "What?" "They're trying to capture me." The next missile didn't explode. It attached. A mechanical device clamped onto the fighter's rear hull. Mara tried to shake it. Nothing. Her controls became sluggish. The Veyrans weren't destroying her. They were immobilizing her. A transmission entered her cockpit. A voice, cold, mechanical. "Human pilot, power down." Mara stared at the words. "No. Your vessel is disabled." "Not yet. You will be extracted." Mara looked at the Mercy of Dawn. The carrier had crossed halfway to the gate. 6 minutes, 18 seconds. She looked at her fuel. 9%. Cannon ammunition, 6%. Hull integrity, 21%. The enemy had finally adapted, and now they wanted her alive. Mara understood why. The human fighter had exposed a weakness in their formation. If they captured its pilot, they could learn how. They could learn human tactics, human flight patterns, human emergency procedures, maybe even the codes used by the evacuation fleet. Mara touched the control panel. Then she heard something, 3 notes, a broken melody, coming through the carrier's emergency transmission. The music box. Someone had accidentally opened a communication channel. Tali's voice followed. "Captain?" The carrier captain answered. "I'm here. Is the human still outside?" Mara froze. The captain looked toward the external cameras. "Yes," Tali whispered. "She promised." "What did she promise?" A pause. "She said she wouldn't let them get us." Mara closed her eyes. She didn't remember saying those exact words. Maybe she had. Maybe a child had simply heard what she needed to hear. Mara opened her eyes. "Rourke, I'm here. I need the carrier's communications channel. You shouldn't be talking to the children. I know. Why? Because I need them to hear something." The enemy device tightened. Metal screamed. Mara's cockpit pressure dropped. 8%. The fighter had enough fuel for perhaps 4 minutes. The gate needed 5. Mara looked at the enemy formation. Then she noticed something. The capture device had attached to the engine housing. It was drawing power. Not much, but enough. The Varens were using her own reactor to power the restraint field. Mara smiled. "Idiots," Rourke asked. "What?" "They need my power." "Yes. Then let's give them too much." Mara rerouted the remaining engine power into the auxiliary system. The reactor temperature rose. Warning, 102%. Rourke shouted, "Mara, stop." "No. You're going to cook the reactor." "I know." "Then eject." Mara laughed. "Ejection still doesn't work." Rourke went silent. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Mara said, "Tell them." "Tell who?" "The children." "What?" "Tell them the pilot is still here." Mara opened the channel. There was static. Then Tali's voice. "Hello?" Mara swallowed. "Hello, Tali." The child gasped. "You know my name. Captain told me. Are you coming with us?" Mara looked at the burning fighter. "No." Tali became quiet. Mara continued, "But I'm going to make sure you get there." "Where?" "The gate." "Then come with us." Mara closed her eyes. "I can't." "Why?" "Because the ejection system was dead. Because her fighter was falling apart. Because the enemy wanted her alive. Because she had 9% fuel. Because the gate was 5 minutes away." Instead, she said, "I've got something to finish." Tali's voice became very small. "Are you scared?" Mara smiled. "Yes." The child seemed surprised. "Pilots can be scared." "Good pilots are." "Then why don't you leave?" Mara looked at the numbers. "Because you haven't reached the gate yet." Silence. Then 3 notes. Tali's music box. Mara listened. "What's the song?" "My mother used to sing it." "Can you play it again?" Tali turned the wheel. 3 notes. Silence. 3 notes. Mara listened carefully. "I think I know how it ends." "You do?" "No." A smile touched Mara's face. "But I think you should keep playing until we find out." The Varen restraint device reached full power. Mara's fighter stopped responding. She couldn't turn, couldn't accelerate, couldn't fire. For the first time since the battle began, she was completely helpless. The enemy fighters moved closer. One of them opened a docking corridor. Mara could see the dark transport beyond it. They were going to pull her aboard, alive. The carrier had 4 minutes. Mara looked at the reactor temperature, 109%. She remembered the mining charges. She remembered the thermal boundary. She remembered the Varen device. And she remembered one rule her instructor had repeated during training. A reactor wasn't a battery. It didn't simply contain energy. It contained pressure. Control that pressure correctly, and it powered a ship. Lose control, and it became something else. Mara reached for the emergency coolant valve, then stopped. Coolant would lower the temperature. She didn't want lower. She wanted higher. She rerouted coolant away from the reactor. Every alarm screamed. 115%. Rourke shouted, "Mara, what are you doing?" Breaking their grip. How? By making my fighter too dangerous to hold. The restraint device began to overload. The Veyron fighters moved away. Mara smiled. That's better. She fired the remaining engine. The fighter lurched. The capture device tore free. Half the rear hull came with it. Mara screamed. The cockpit filled with smoke, but she was moving. Fuel, 6%. Hull, 12%. Gate, 3 minutes, 34 seconds. Mara turned toward the Veyron formation. There were 11 fighters left. She had almost no weapons, so she used the one thing they hadn't accounted for. Her damaged fighter. Mara dove. The Veyron scattered. She wasn't attacking them. She was forcing them to move. Every turn was calculated. Every burst of thrust changed their formation. She flew close enough to one fighter that it had to evade. That fighter crossed the path of another. The second fighter fired. Its weapon struck the first. One destroyed. 22. Mara rolled. A third fighter tried to flank her. She cut power. The fighter overshot. She used its exhaust wake to accelerate. The damaged engine screamed. The maneuver ripped another panel from her hull. Hull, 7%. But she was behind the Veyron. Mara fired. 3 rounds. The enemy fighter exploded. 21. Her cannon ammunition reached 0. No missiles, no shields, no ejection, only one engine. Mara looked at the gate. 2 minutes. The mercy of dawn was almost there. The Veyrons knew it too. They stopped chasing Mara. They turned toward the carrier. Mara's heart dropped. No. She pushed the throttle. The engine coughed. Nothing. Then it caught. Mara accelerated. Come on. The fighter shook violently. Come on. She pushed harder. The engine temperature climbed. 118%. The Veyron fighters launched missiles. 6. Mara had no weapons, so she flew directly toward them. Rourke shouted, "Mara!" She waited. At the last second, she rolled. The missiles followed. Then Mara pulled straight upward. The missiles passed beneath her. The mercy of dawn was directly behind. Mara's stomach dropped. She had brought them too close. The missiles locked onto the carrier. Mara had one option. She turned around and flew between them. The first missile struck her fighter. The cockpit spun. The second missile exploded against the damaged rear hull. Everything went white. Mara couldn't feel her left hand. Her helmet filled with blood. The controls were gone. The fighter was falling, but the missiles were gone too. The carrier continued. Gate, 1 minute, 22 seconds. Mara tried to move. Nothing. She looked at the tactical display. The carrier was almost there, but 3 Veyron fighters were still approaching. Mara couldn't shoot, couldn't maneuver, couldn't eject. She had nothing left. Then she noticed the manual thruster controls. 4 tiny emergency jets. Each could fire once. She had used them only during training. They were designed for docking, not combat. Mara stared at them. Why not? She fired the first. The fighter rotated. Second. Another rotation. Third. The fighter turned. Fourth. The fighter was pointed directly at the nearest Veyron ship. Mara understood. She didn't need to destroy it. She only needed to make it move. She fired the last emergency thruster. Her fighter shot forward. The Veyron pilot reacted. The fighter dodged, but in doing so, it crossed the path of the second Veyron. They collided. Both disappeared. The third fighter hesitated. That was enough. The carrier entered the gate. 30 seconds. The mercy of dawn vanished into the extraction corridor. Mara watched its signal disappear. She exhaled. Made it. Rourke's voice came through. Mara. She smiled. Children? Safe? All of them? A pause. All 247. Mara closed her eyes. Good. Then the Veyron flagship appeared on her display. It had been waiting. The battle was over. For everyone except her. The flagship opened a tractor field. Mara's fighter was too damaged to resist. The ship pulled her closer. Rourke spoke. Mara, can you hear me? Yes. Rescue team is 3 minutes away. Mara looked at the enemy ship. Gate is closed. I know. They'll capture me. We're coming. You can't reach me. We'll try. Mara knew what that meant. 3 minutes was too long. The Vayrans had already begun boarding. Mara looked at the small display beside her. The carrier's final signal was gone. The children were safe. That was enough. Then Tali's voice came through. Somehow, her communication channel had remained open. Pilot? Mara's eyes filled. Tali, you made it. So did you. Are you coming? Mara looked toward the enemy boarding craft. No. The child's breathing changed. But you said, I know. Mara swallowed. I said I'd make sure you got there. Tali was silent. Then, your name. What? I don't know your name. Mara looked at the cracked cockpit glass. Lieutenant Mara Venn. Tali repeated it. Mara Venn. Yes, I'll remember. Mara smiled. Good. Then Tali began playing the music box. 3 notes. Silence. 3 notes. Mara listened. She whispered, keep the song. Tali asked, why? Because one day you'll fix the 4th note. The channel went quiet. Mara leaned back. Outside, the Veyron ship filled the canopy. She heard boots striking the hull. The cockpit door began to open. Mara looked once more at the stars. Then she whispered, you're safe, and waited. The rescue team arrived 2 minutes later. They found no pilot, no intact fighter, no boarding craft, only debris. The Veyron flagship had escaped. Mara Venn was presumed captured. For 72 hours, the human fleet searched. Nothing. Then the Mercy of Dawn reached neutral space. 247 children were transferred to a refugee station. The youngest were taken to medical care. The oldest were questioned. Officials wanted reports. Command wanted tactical information. Journalists wanted a story. Tali wanted one thing. Where is Mara? Nobody could answer. Commander Rourke visited her room. He found her sitting beside a window. The music box rested in her lap. Its metal corner was still crushed. Its song still had only 3 notes. Rourke sat beside her. Tali. She didn't look at him. Is she dead? Rourke didn't lie. We don't know. Tali nodded. She said she'd make sure we got here. You did. She didn't. Rourke looked at the music box. She couldn't come with you. Tali finally looked at him. Then I'll go to her. Rourke didn't understand. Tali opened the music box. 3 notes. Silence. I don't know where she is. Neither do we. But she told me to keep the song. Rourke smiled sadly. Then keep it. They found Mara 11 days later. Not on the Veyron flagship. Not in a prison. Not dead. She was drifting inside the remains of her fighter. The Veyrans had abandoned the wreck after boarding it. They had assumed the pilot had died. Mara hadn't. Barely. Her oxygen supply had lasted 17 hours. Her injuries had been severe. She had broken 3 ribs. Her left arm was fractured. She had lost enough blood to become unconscious. But she had survived. A human salvage drone detected the fighter's emergency beacon. When the rescue crew opened the cockpit, they found Mara unconscious. One hand was wrapped around something, a tiny communication device, still transmitting. On its final recorded channel were 3 notes, a broken song. The rescue medic listened, then looked at the others. What's that? Nobody knew, until they recovered the Mercy of Dawn's passenger records. Tali, 11 years old, Cathari refugee, her mother's music box, 3 surviving notes. Mara woke 19 days later. The first thing she asked was, "The children?" The medic smiled. "All alive?" Mara closed her eyes. "All 247? All 247. She breathed out. Good. Then she slept. The official report was 26 pages. It listed ammunition expenditure, fuel consumption, enemy losses, structural failures, command decisions. It stated that Lieutenant Mara Venn had violated withdrawal orders. It stated that her actions had resulted in the destruction of 7 enemy fighters. It stated that the Mercy of Dawn had reached the extraction gate with all passengers alive. It also stated that the human military had suffered 1 destroyed fighter and 1 critically injured pilot. The report recommended a formal inquiry. Rourke read it once. Then he closed the file. 26 pages, he said. Mara was sitting beside the hospital window. That's all? Apparently. What about the children? They're safe. Then the report is long enough. Rourke smiled. You disobeyed a direct order. I know. You could have been court-martialed. I know. You could have died. Mara looked outside. I know. Rourke leaned closer. Would you do it again? Mara didn't answer immediately. Then, if I had known there were 247 children? Rourke nodded. Yes. Mara looked at him. Faster. The Varens never explained why they wanted Mara alive. That part remained classified. Some believed they wanted human flight technology. Others believed they wanted a pilot's neural patterns. A few suspected something darker. But the Varens never admitted anything. They simply withdrew from that region of space. They had lost 21 fighters, 3 command vessels had been damaged, and a civilian transport carrying refugees had escaped. Military analysts called the battle a tactical anomaly, an unlikely sequence of successful maneuvers, a statistical outlier, a single pilot making decisions faster than an enemy could adapt. But none of those reports mentioned Tali's music box. None mentioned the 3 notes. None mentioned the promise. 6 months later, Mara returned to flight duty. She couldn't use her left hand the way she once had, so she learned again, slowly, 1 movement at a time. She rebuilt her cockpit controls. She changed the throttle, moved the emergency switches, added a manual backup to the ejection system, and above her console she kept 1 small object, a piece of crushed metal, recovered from the Mercy of Dawn. It wasn't from her fighter. It was from Tali's music box. Tali had given it to her when the children returned to Nereth's refugee colony. Why? Mara had asked. Tali shrugged. Because you gave me the song. Mara looked at the broken piece. I didn't. You did. I only listened. Tali smiled. Sometimes that's enough. 3 years passed. The Kethari children grew. Some were adopted. Some stayed together. Some became engineers, doctors, teachers, pilots. Tali became something else, a musician. She repaired her mother's music box. It took her 2 years. She rebuilt the 4th note from memory. Not exactly. She couldn't remember the original sound, so she created a new one, her own. The first time she played the complete song, 247 children gathered in the same room. There were adults there too. People who had lost homes. Parents who had lost children. Survivors who had stopped believing that anyone would come for them. Tali played. 4 notes. The room became silent. Then she played the song again and again. At the back of the room stood Mara Venn. Older. Still carrying the scars. Still walking with a slight limp. She didn't announce herself. She didn't need to. Tali saw her, stopped playing, and ran. Mara caught her. Tali was no longer 11. She was 14, nearly as tall as Mara's shoulder, but Mara hugged her anyway. You fixed it, Mara whispered. Tali nodded. I told you I would. Mara smiled. I knew you would. Years later, the Kethari settlement built a school. The school had a small courtyard. In the courtyard stood a memorial. Not a statue, not a monument, just a piece of metal mounted beneath a glass cover. A fragment of a human fighter. Underneath it was a simple inscription, Mara Venn. Then, below her name, she stayed. Nothing else, no rank, no medals, no list of enemy ships, no mention of doctrine, no mention of politics, no mention of the impossible odds. The children didn't need those numbers. They knew the important one, 247. Mara visited the school once every year. She always arrived without ceremony. She would sit with the students, answer questions, show them how a cockpit worked, explain why engines overheated, explain why pilots counted fuel, Explain why sometimes the safest decision wasn't the easiest one. The children always asked the same question. Was it scary? Mara always answered honestly, yes. And you weren't afraid? I was. Then why did you stay? Mara would look toward the courtyard, toward the piece of metal beneath the glass. Then she would say, because someone had to. She never said more. On the 10th anniversary of the battle, Tali gave Mara a gift, the original music box. Fully repaired, the metal was polished, the broken corner had been replaced. The song played 4 complete notes. Mara turned the wheel. Music filled the room. She looked at Tali. You kept it. Tali smiled. You told me to. Mara listened. For the first time, she heard the song the way it had always been meant to sound. 4 notes, no silence, no missing piece, just music. She handed the box back. Keep it. Tali frowned. But it's yours. Mara shook her head. No. She closed Tali's fingers around it. It was always yours. Tali looked down, then understood. She hugged Mara, and for a long time, neither spoke. Years later, children who had never seen Nereth would learn the story. They would not remember the number of enemy ships. They would not remember the fuel percentage. They would not care how many weapons Mara had left. They would remember something simpler. A human pilot was told to leave. She didn't. A damaged ship carried 247 children. She stayed between them and the guns, and when the last weapon was gone, she kept flying. Tali eventually became the director of the Cathari Settlement's Flight Academy. On her desk sat the repaired music box. Every new student was told the story, but Tali never told it as a legend. She told it as a warning. Don't become careless because someone saved you. The students always looked confused. Tali would continue, become worth saving. Then she would wind the music box. 4 notes, and every year, on the anniversary of the evacuation, 247 candles were placed in the courtyard, not for the dead, for the living, for the children who had made it, for the names that had not been erased, and for a pilot who had once looked at a failing reactor, a broken fighter, and an approaching fleet, and decided that the numbers could wait. Mara never flew that exact fighter again. The wreck had been recovered. Most of it was destroyed, but one component survived, the small manual thruster assembly. Years later, it was installed in a training simulator. The instructors called it the Venn maneuver. The students called it impossible. Then they tried it. Most failed. Some succeeded. The best pilots learned something from it. The maneuver wasn't about courage. It was about timing. About knowing exactly how much control remained when everything else had failed. About understanding that a broken machine could still obey one final command. And about never wasting the last thing you had. One evening, long after Mara had retired from active flight, she visited the school courtyard. The sun was setting. Children were running between the buildings. Someone was playing music inside. 4 notes. She sat beneath the memorial. Her fingers touched the glass. Under it was the fragment of her old fighter. The metal was scratched, burned, almost black. Mara smiled. You lasted longer than I did. A small voice answered behind her. Who? Mara turned. A little Cathari boy stood there, maybe 7. He pointed toward the memorial. Who is Mara Venn? Mara looked at the name, then at the child. She could have told him. She could have explained the battle, the fleet, the carrier, the gate, the fuel, the broken fighter, the 247 children. Instead, she asked, Do you know the song? The boy nodded. My teacher taught us. Can you play it? He smiled, then began humming. 4 notes. Perfectly. Mara listened. The boy finished. Was she your friend? He asked. Mara looked toward the school windows, where Tali, now an instructor herself, was teaching another class. Mara smiled. Yes. Was she brave? Mara thought about the cockpit, the blood, the alarms, the fear, the choice. Then she shook her head. She was scared. The boy looked confused. Mara gently tapped the memorial glass. But she stayed. The boy nodded, as if that explained everything. Then he ran back toward the school. Mara remained beneath the memorial. Inside, the music started again. 4 notes, complete this time. And for a few seconds, the old pilot simply sat there and listened. No alarms, no weapons, no countdown. Just a song that had once been missing a note, and a child who had grown up to teach it. Original draft closed with this line, flagging it since it doesn't match your usual no CTA and narration convention, so it's a clean cut if you don't want it. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.